It's 10 o'clock at night and I just lost an O-ring on the base gasket. We have to split the cases on this again. All right, so we've already done a whole top end on this. We already sent the cylinder out to get bored. It's got new piston rings in it, new timing chain, but I was not down in the bottom end. And in the video we did the top end on, this thing had a bunch of water in the bottom. That's nasty. So now we're gonna go down in the bottom end and investigate. We're gonna start by taking the head off. All right, now the head should just pop off. Now we're gonna start tearing apart the sides of the motor. Now we're down to flywheel. This is just a flywheel puller from Harbor Freight. There it is. This gear's coming off. All right, so now we can get the timing chain out of there. And then we're gonna move on to this piece here. Let's see if this will pop off. Oh shit, I got a leak. She's leaking. All right, there's that whole assembly. All right, so now this can come out. Doesn't look like there's anything crazy there. All right, we're gonna get all these Phillips head screws out and we're gonna pop the oil filter cover off. Kind of get in here and massage this a little bit. Get this gasket to break free. All right, this is caca. Pop this puck and bearing out of there. All right, so this clutch pack comes out by itself. Oh, I see now. See how there's a disc shape right there? Line that disc shape up with that shaft and then that whole hub will come off. All right, so we already have all this stuff here apart. All right, I think that's it for that. Now it looks like we're gonna have to pull this black piece off right here. All right, so we've got our crankshaft, we've got our counterbalancer, our oil pump, and our shift mechanism. So we're gonna start pulling the gears off of this side. All right, so I'm gonna go around all these case bolts and I'm gonna take a pick and I'm gonna start cleaning out all the Phillips heads on them because these things are filthy. A good rule of thumb when you're splitting a case, if you're not sure which side to split it from, look for the side that has the most case bolts holding the case halves together. And that's the side you're gonna wanna pop up. So we wanna leave the crank in the bottom side and we wanna leave a transmission in the bottom side. Let's get all these case bolts out. All right, so now we're ready to split the cases and I'm super excited because we get to try out a new tool. I've got Motion Pro's crankcase splitter, the V2. This is supposed to be fancier. I've used the original version and it worked really well, so I'm excited to try this out. We've got our 3 rods that'll thread into the case. We've got 3 adapters up here. You guys have never seen one of these work. They work super awesome and they're way better than using a punch and a hammer to get the cases split. You're gonna thread these in. We've got these sliders here. These sliders go inside all the little ribs in here. I'm gonna slide all those little black things up towards the center. Slide each leg over the threads. I wanna get my centerpiece here, this lined up on the crank. Now that everything's in there, I'm gonna slide all these black little keepers in. All right, now the big thing is you just wanna make sure that this whole assembly is good and squared up with the crank. You can fine tune it by threading in these adjusters a little more, a little less, just to help make sure you're good and level. Once you're good and level though, we're just gonna thread this in just like you would a flywheel puller, and it's gonna slowly start pulling the cases apart. It's gonna leave the crank down in the bottom half, but it's gonna lift the top off of it. So I'm already starting to split. All right, so this side back here isn't coming yet, which is to be expected because we're so far away from it. All right, so I've got a really good split in here on this side and it's tighter on this side here. So what I wanna do is kind of make sure that I didn't forget a bolt and give it a good once over. And as long as there isn't a bolt stuck anywhere, I might need to persuade this side over here. There might be a knock pin over here that's a little stuck. And because I'm pulling on this half, it's gonna wanna kind of pull it up and at an angle. So I don't see any bolts, so I am gonna get a hammer and I'm just gonna tap this side up a little bit. I'm gonna add a little more pressure on this. All right, I'm thinking I've got a knock pin stuck pretty decent somewhere. So I just backed the pressure off of this because I thought maybe I was pinching it. But I'm gonna put a little more pressure up here on this. Kind of tap the tranny down and I'm just gonna kind of keep working it with a screwdriver. There. All right, I'm gonna tap the tranny down again. Make sure that's good and down. Kind of watch, make sure the whole case is coming off evenly. There we go. All right, that's Motion Pro's version 2 crankcase splitter. That's an awesome tool. So what I'm gonna try to do now is I'm gonna take the counterbalancer out and set it over here. And then we're gonna pop the shift forks out. Now the tranny. All right. So the tranny can come out all in one piece. All right, the only thing we got left to do now is the crank. Maybe that'll be enough. All right, now we got the fun task of cleaning all of this up. All right, now that we got the cases apart, what I want to do is I want to clean them. And the first thing I want to do is get all the old gasket off the mating surfaces on both of these cases. And then we're going to take it over to the parts washer. Let me jump in here real quick. My name's Casey and this is the Toy Shop. If this is your first time here, welcome. And if it's not, well, welcome back. Here's the Toy Shop. We buy a machine, we get it running, then we tear it all the way down and then we restore it. If that sounds like something you're interested in, consider subscribing below. Also down in the description, there's a link to my website. In there, you can find cool merch. There's also information on AMSOIL, which I highly recommend running in all your power sports. There's also a link down below to my Patreon. So if you want to consider helping out, you can sign up for the subscription and buy me a can of carburetor cleaner every month. That would help out a lot because we go through a lot of carburetor cleaner around here. So let's get back to the video. Now what I want to do is we want to get all the bearings out of these cases because I'm going to replace all the tranny bearings in this. What I want to try first is I want to try the torch method. So what I'm going to do is heat this up, get it warm, and then we're going to tap it on something hard upside down and hope that they fall out. Well, it worked on the two blind bearings, which is actually ideal. So I guess we're just gonna have to kind of persuade out this easy one, which that wasn't hard anyways. So, all right, so we have one bare naked case. All right, there's nothing left into this, so we are gonna stick both of these case halves in the sandblaster and we're gonna try to get this looking pretty decent. All right, so I would show you sandblasting, but my window is very glazed over, so it's really hard to see in here. It's hard enough for me to see, but there's glass bead down in there. This isn't vapor blasting, so I'm not expecting the same result. I'm just hoping to get a lot of stuff cleaned up. I'm gonna definitely focus more on the outside here than I am the inside because I don't wanna risk plugging any passageways. So I'm gonna try to keep as much out of there as I can. I did take everything out of this, so I'm not worried about ruining something, but I'm still trying to be cautious. So we're gonna bead blast this case and see how it looks when it comes out. All right, so we got these bead blasted and cleaned up pretty decent, but what I wanna do is I wanna use this Scotch-Brite wheel and I wanna bring this aluminum back even better. So we're gonna run the big Scotch-Brite wheel. This is like probably a 6-inch piece or 7-inch piece of Scotch-Brite. We're gonna use this to get everywhere we can, and then we're gonna get out the die grinder with a smaller piece of Scotch-Brite and we're gonna get into all the little nooks and crannies. So let's get started. All right, so here's side by side. Man, what a difference. That looks so much better. All right, so now we're gonna do this big one on the bench grinder, and then we're gonna get out the Dremel. All right, so we got these shined up pretty good. Now what I wanna do is I wanna go over it with just a loose piece of Scotch-Brite. I wanna try to make all the lines the same way. So I'm just gonna go back and forth this direction. I'm not gonna swirl. I'm not gonna go this way. I'm just gonna go this way. So I want all the lines to be one direction. I'm not really trying to do any cleaning right now, just trying to get it all to look good. By the way, I got all these Scotch-Brite attachments from Cameron. He's another YouTuber. He's got a store called Prime. He's got a lot of this stuff to help you make stuff that's really nice. He's got a lot of this cleaning stuff, like the Scotch-Brite. He's got buffing wheels. He's got a lot of tips and tricks on his YouTube channel. He's one of the big inspirations for this channel here. So if you're interested in this kind of thing, then I highly suggest checking his channel and store out. I'll post a link down in the description for that. There we go. I'm pretty happy with that. All right, so let's go do the other case. All right, so now we're gonna work on getting the rest of this tore completely apart because I need everything out of all of these individual pieces so that I can stick it in the sandblaster and not worry about getting sand where I don't need it to be. All right, so we got pretty much every single piece of this motor tore apart and laid out here on this bench except the case halves and the crank. The case halves are over there and the crank is right there. That we're gonna kind of push off for a little while. So what I wanna work on right now is I wanna get everything, every case cover that's black. I need to get that sandblasted so we can paint that. So we're gonna do that right now. All right, so now we're ready to paint all of these. We've got them sandblasted, we got to blow it off, so they're pretty clean. Now what we're gonna have to do is go through all of them and kind of mask off everything we're not gonna want painted. This cover here I've already got taped up, so we're gonna do that to all the rest of those. So we're ready to paint all this. I got it all masked off. I've got each piece here kind of on its own little piece of cardboard. Some of the stuff that needs primed on both surfaces, we'll end up priming this, letting it fully cure, then we'll flip it over, prime the other side, and then we'll be ready to start shooting that black with paint. With that being said, we're gonna try using PJ1's primer. I wanna try to get away from the Rust-Oleum because I'm not super happy with how that is. So we're gonna try this PJ1. Now, we've done it on the racks and I liked it so far. So we got everything primed and I have zero complaints over the primer. The primer went on super smooth. It coated really nice. Really, it did exactly what it should do as a primer. So this has been drying all night, so they should be good for paint. What we're going to use now is we're going to use this here. This is engine and case paint satin black, and it's good up to 500 degrees. So definitely make sure you use some sort of heat paint, especially doing the cylinder and the head. The side cases probably don't see as much heat, but I'm hoping this gives me a pretty OEM style finish. So one of the things I kind of learned when I was doing this, and then we'll just take this cover here for instance, basically this is going to be the side I want to finish painting. So I want to start by painting the simpler side. Like I've got to hit the back side of this here and the back side in here. I want to put it this way here first and paint it. So then when it dries and I flip it, I risk screwing up the spot that's not going to be seen as much. And then I can finish painting this side and letting it fully cure. All right, so we're going to start painting these one at a time, just like we primed them. All right, so all the engine parts are all painted. They're dry. Now I think we're finally ready to start assembling everything. We've got my case halves here. They're all polished. I just took the blow gun and I spent a little extra time blowing out all of the little holes all the way around the case covers, just because I don't want sand inside the motor for obvious reasons. And we've sandblasted the crap out of all of these parts. So before we put anything together, I'll make sure everything's blown out really good and visually inspected for sand. I've got all new bearings for everything in the transmission. I didn't find a kit anywhere online. So what I did is as I pulled the bearings out, I looked at the part number and I ordered that part number. A lot of these are Parts Unlimited parts. These two here are from Napa. So we've got all new bearings for everything, a complete gasket and gasket kit, and then a complete seal kit. The crank bearings are on, and that's pretty much what we're going to start with. Now I want to go through and put all my tranny bearings in the case first and start there before we start actually putting shift drums and transmissions together inside the case. So let's start with bearings. All right, so up here I bought all new knock pins for everything, for all my cases. So I've got the 3 different ones set out here because I don't know exactly which ones I'm going to need and when I'm going to need them. And I got Partzilla pulled up here on my phone so I can use that to reference as we do this in engine build. Usually I just take 2x4s and stand them up on edge to give myself the room under here to be able to put everything in. But because this crank is so damn long, I need to get it up higher. So I've got these 2 identical scissor jacks from Extreme Max. I really like them and they're going to work super good for this. I wouldn't buy them just for this, but I have them, so I'm going to use them. All right, now the crank. There it goes. So we're just going to stick this in here for now. I think we're about ready to drop the tranny shafts in here. We're just going to hold the stacks together. There. All right, we've got this case here. This is the side that doesn't have any of the knock pins in it. So this is the flattest side. So this is the side we're gonna put, this is Yamabond. We're gonna put Yamabond on this surface here so that we can put it onto here because there's not a gasket for this side. This might be the last time I use this tube. Nope, the last time was the last time I was gonna use that tube. All right, we're gonna use gasket maker, some red RTV. Usually I use Yamabond, but mine's all dried up right now and I didn't realize that till now. But this will work fine. This groove here is an oil passage, so we can't plug that. And just kind of a general rule of thumb anyways, when it comes to doing this, you want to put it on real light. I like to do the poke method, where you just kind of keep poking it with your finger up and down, keeping it real light, because you don't want to smear this. And we're just going to go all the way around. All right, so now that we're on this side of the motor, I want to start bringing over all the little parts we're going to need, wipe them off, and I'm going to set them right here so we can start putting this together. I'm going to throw our gasket on. All right, now we get to put on our first painted case cover. See, if this was Rust-Oleum, it would be peeling paint off the edges where the tape was breaking free. I'm actually pretty impressed with that. Well, I think we got our first one on there. And then another gasket, another one. I want to make sure it's good and lined up right here. And then we're just going to flip her over and start it on the engine. This right here, where this bearing is going to be the point that's going to hold us up the most. Alrighty, well, that's on there. So when I was putting this cover on, I'm kind of not super thrilled with this. I really had some high hopes for the PJ1 paint, but once I got the bolts tight, it just chipped the paint right off it. Like the paint is very hard, and because it's very hard, it's very brittle. So as soon as you tighten the bolt down on it, it just breaks out a whole bunch of paint all the way around it, which actually seems to be worse than the Rust-Oleum because the Rust-Oleum stays soft, so it just kind of pulls the paint up from directly underneath the head of the bolt, where this paint here just breaks out all the way around. I think the paint looks beautiful on the case, but when it comes to tightening down a bolt, it's garbage. So you can see all my holes there broke out, all the paint chipped right off of them. So I'm not super thrilled about that. This is one of the reasons why we're restoring a Moto 4 right now, because if this was an expensive ATV, then I would be tearing this all back apart so I could re-sandblast the cases and do it over again. But for the Moto 4, it's going to be good enough, and I don't think you'll notice it when it's all put together. All right, so we're good there. Let's try polishing up this plastic piece right here. All right, so I bought this prime plastic polishing kit from Cameron. So what it says to do is take some soapy water, and basically we're just gonna wet sand this. It came with some sanding pads for DA sander, but I'm not gonna be able to use that on this. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna do this by hand. I just took a red Solo cup and put some dish soap in it, and I'm just gonna kind of soak it a little bit, starting off with some 400 grit, just because I don't have any deep scratches to remove. It's actually starting to come pretty good. I think I'm gonna rip this pad in half because by hand it's kind of too big. So I blew this off and got it good and dry. And this middle right here is what it looks like after hitting with just 400 grit sandpaper. It feels super smooth, but it still has like that cloudiness on it. Now the edges here, I just went back over to the buffing wheel to see if it would kind of come back now that I've kind of rough sanded it, and I'm actually pretty happy with that. So I think what we're going to do is go back to the buffing wheel now that I've sanded a lot of the heavy sun-baked stuff off of here. We're going to see if we can get it to polish up decent on the buffing wheel. All right, now it says to wipe it off with a cleaner. So we're just gonna wipe all this off. That looks way better than it did before. I think I'm happy enough with that. I don't even think I'm gonna put the other wheel on. I did buy new bolts for this. Now we're gonna put our dipstick in, and then voila, that side of the motor is done. So real quick, before we go much farther, we wanna put this plug in here. All right, so we're just gonna push it in there. Make sure we get it all the way down in, because that's a seal. That whole cavity down in there is supposed to fill with oil. So we wanna make sure that nothing leaks out of that. There we go. All right, so we're on this side of the motor now. I'm gonna put the oil cap on it so we don't get anything in there. First thing we wanna do is put the timing chain in. I'm gonna slide our one guide down in here. All right, next thing to go on is this sprocket. Put some oil on that. All right, now the flywheel's gonna go on. So the keyway's on there. Now we're gonna take our flywheel and make sure that all our little rollers are in here. I'm gonna put a little bit of oil on this spot on the sprocket that those rollers are gonna touch. Line up our keyway. So you might have to work this gear down in here a little bit because the rollers were holding me up till I kind of spun that gear back there. There. Now the bitch would be if that was in backwards, which I hope it's not. So it goes in this way. I'm gonna stuff it in, pull it up through, and I'm gonna put a knot in it, pull it through. It's gonna end up getting pulled out this way, so I want it to retract back in this way. So once I kind of have the direction started, I'm gonna just worry about wrapping it. All right, now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this recoil rope and I'm gonna stick it through this little window here, and I'm gonna hold it. Now this right here, this little tooth sticking out of there, that's gotta catch the spring. So my springs here, I gotta kind of orient them. I'm gonna stick it on there. So this is completely relaxed. There's no spring pressure. I wanna give it one turn of spring pressure. So when the recoil handle is all the way up in here, this is how much spring pressure it has. So I wanna give it that much, one turn. Now I'm gonna hold this so I don't lose that one turn. Stick that up through. And then since I'm right here, my handle's here, feed this up through. All right, so I get to do that all over again. I'm gonna give it one turn, fish it up through, do a knot. I can always cut this extra string off here and then burn it back again. But there, now I've got one turn of spring pressure when I'm all the way homed out. So that should be good. Now I'm gonna stick this dog in here, stick my little cover plate on, and then zap that with a couple ugga-duggas. There we go, got the recoil done. I almost forgot about the starter, so let's get the starter on here, get that put together, and then we'll be on to the motor. I want to start with the brushes. I ordered 2 new brushes for this, so we're gonna get them popped out. All right, so I'm gonna start with this brush here. All right, so there's one in there. So right there's both of our brushes. Well, that seems pretty good. All right, so that's on there. Give her some test spins, feels pretty good. All right, now our housing, slide that up to it. All right, now line up my little washers, tighten up my bolts. All right, there's one, slide my bolt in. All right, there we have it. She is assembled. All right, so we're ready to put the cylinder and the piston and the base gasket and stuff on this. I want to start with doing the base gasket because I can't tell you how many times I've gotten the cylinder started on the rings and stuff and then realized I forgot the base gasket. So we're just gonna start with that. So I'm gonna take and stick the base gasket on. I got 2 knock pins closest to the timing chain, and then there's an O-ring that sits down here in this little groove, which is kind of a pain in the rear end to make sure that it stays where it should. I've got that stuff there. I wanna put a little bit of oil here in this rod just to kind of pre-lube it up. Now we're gonna grab the piston and put some oil on the wrist pin, kind of work it in there now that I got some oil on the wrist pin. Take the piston, arrow towards the exhaust, which is the front of the motor. Take our wrist pin, get it started in the piston, slide it over this, shove that in there. Once that's in there, we're gonna get our circlip. Now I'm gonna recommend this to you, but you should buy a new circlip for this because the circlips be bent when you took them out and you wouldn't know it, so they wouldn't be as strong as they should be. All right, so it's 10 o'clock at night and I just lost an O-ring on the base gasket trying to put the circlip in. That O-ring I had right there, I should not have had there until I was ready to slide the cylinder on. And somewhere down in here now is an O-ring and I can't find it. We have to split the cases on this again. It's gotta come all the way apart. All right, so I didn't quite have to tear it all the way apart. I actually could have left the whole other side of the motor on, but I should have started with this side, but way down in there. I don't know how well you can see that, but yeah, there it is. All right, don't put the O-ring there until the absolute last second, or do what I normally do, but didn't do this time because I don't know why, probably because it's 10 o'clock at night, and pack rags in here so nothing can fall in here. That was a lesson learned the hard way that I should not have needed to learn. Now I got the O-ring, let's get back to putting the cylinder on. All right, so we're gonna try this again. I got rags packed down in here so that I'm not worried about dropping anything. But I think we're gonna grab the cylinder and we're gonna get it started on the piston, and then we're gonna take the rags out and put the O-ring on. Just go one ring at a time and let the taper at the bottom of the bore help you get it started. All right, so now that that's on there, I'm gonna pull the rags out. I'm gonna put a little grease on this O-ring, so hopefully it wants to stay a little better. Fish the chain up through the cylinder. Sweet. All right, now that we got that on there, there's 2 bolts over here on this side at the base. I'm gonna put those 2 in just so the cylinder will stay put. All right, so we've already lapped the valves before. I'll make sure I put the card thing up here somewhere. I've already done the head on this once, so I'm not super worried about going all out on lapping the valves in and stuff like that. So we are just gonna assemble this and check the valve lash, and hopefully it's good, and then be able to rock and roll, I'm hoping. I bought 4 brand new bolts for this because I figured it's been off before, and these bolts are probably pretty stretched, so I'm just gonna get them all kind of run down in quick. All right, I think we're gonna torque it right now while we're right here. And then once we get everything put together, we might retouch them real quick just to make sure they're torqued. All right, so we need 192 inch-pounds. So that's torqued. Now we do have 2 bolts to put in here and here. All right, we're gonna slam bam, thank you ma'am, the timing on this real quick. All right, my timing mark looks like it's just past where it needs to be. So I'm gonna basically pick out that link right there, and that looks like the one my line's gonna go on. So I got my timing mark lined up there and there, and my timing mark looks pretty close right there. And if I were to tighten up that, we'd be all set. All right, and give that a couple quick little zappy zaps. Roll her over. All right, well, it didn't hit or anything, so should be in pretty good shape. I'm gonna throw the timing chain tensioner in it now. All right, so I'm gonna thread this in until the stem of that plunger is about flush. I'm gonna tighten up this big nut, snug that up a little bit. All right, now we're gonna put this plastic cap on. We're gonna run that in, pop this cover on, and then we're gonna do the valve covers there. This is the exhaust valve cap. I tore this thing all apart so I could rebuild it, and I had gone ahead and re-zinc plated everything, and I actually think it turned out pretty nice. Gotta put that bolt in there, so that'll hold that all in there. That turned out pretty sweet. So it's gonna go in here. This motor's looking pretty damn good. Still really not a fan of this paint. This paint kinda really let me down. It's flaking off really bad around everything. All right, we got the intake cap to put on. All right, I'm gonna stuff a rag on the intake and exhaust real quick, just so nothing gets in there. And then we've got the shifter linkage. All right, guys, thanks for watching. If you want to stay up to date on this Moto 4, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. And if you like this video, hit the like button. I do have Patreon if you want to help support the channel. You can help by buying me 1 can of carb cleaner a month. If you do that, I'll put your name on it and I will shout you out during the show. But until next time, peace.